Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conscious Conversion. I am so excited today to bring you this guest that I'm not going to tell you who it is yet until we get to this point, but you're going to love her. She's amazing. She's perfect for the podcast. And what is this podcast? If you haven't heard us before, it's Conscious Conversion, a weekly podcast about how we bridge the gap between business and spirit, money and meaning, technology and regeneration in a wildly changing world. In a time of so much polarity and uncertainty, this podcast explores how together we are connecting across the planet, across our differences, and across dimensions as we build the new earth together. I am your faithful and loving host, Sarah Yemtich, and I am so excited to be having this conversation today with Krista Williams, who you may have heard of before. She is the co-founder of Almost 30, a top 50 podcast that I've known about for years, global brand and community, with a background in digital marketing, sales, and strategy at Fortune 100 companies. Krista left the corporate world behind to build Almost 30 from the ground up alongside her bestie and co-host, Lindsay. Since its inception in 2016, Almost 30 has grown to more than 50 million downloads, has been nominated for Best Wellness Podcast and Best Spirituality Podcast by iHeartRadio, and has been recognized by Forbes, Entrepreneur, The Hollywood Reporter, Girl Boss, Shondaland, and more. Krista leads worldwide events, digital programs, including the Law of One Book Club, and her upcoming Life Edit course, and a membership platform to fuel her community's conscious evolution. As the co-founder of Podcast Pro, Krista guides others to build their dream podcast and career. Krista is also the creator of It's Krista, which provides an honest take on health, wellness, spirituality, and style. She is a leading speaker on the topics of entrepreneurship, personal development, modern spirituality, and body acceptance. She's been a featured speaker at Pop Sugar Playground, Create and Cultivate, Podcast Movement, Good Wellness Festival, Blog Her, and more. And she will soon release her very first tarot deck, the Activation Tarot. Girl, you are singing my song, speaking my language. I love everything you do. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm excited. If you're loving it all, then we can dig in on so much of it, because I feel like, you know how sometimes you're in your own experience so much, you're like, no one likes what I like, or no one's interested in what I'm interested in. And you can feel lonely. So it feels good to have a kindred soul where we can just jam on all things Law of One, tarot, digital marketing. I'm excited.
Is your tarot Law of One themed?
Yeah. So my tarot deck came about. It's actually 2 decks. So I'm going to bring through 2 decks this year. So when I read the Law of One, which is a channeled text, there's actually 5 books within the Law of One. It's called The Raw Material. It changed my life. So it really helped me understand unity consciousness in a really profound way. It just changed every fiber of my being. And I was so surprised to find that in the 5th book of the Law of One series, it's all about tarot. So it's there's so much importance in the archetypes of tarot. So I wanted to bring through that to people, to the masses, because I've never seen a Law of One deck. So I did create a Law of One deck. And then I realized that people like tarot for divination as well. Law of One tarot is not for divination. And so I created 2 fully working decks. One that's just archetypal, the Law of One. And then the second one that's a general, major arcana and minor arcana tarot deck. So people can have their 2 different types of experiences with them. So those will be coming this year. And I'm really excited about it. It's been so much work.
Krista, there are so many things we could talk about around digital marketing and sales as the spiritual process of sales. So many topics we could go down, and I could spend 2 hours talking to you about tarot and the Law of One. And I'm so curious, this archetypal deck. That's not a divination deck. Is it still the 78 cards? Is it just the major arcana? Is it totally different thing?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So it's 22. So it's just the major arcana.
Nice.
So
Okay.
in the Law of One, so basically Ra, which is a channeled entity from Venus, who is the same Ra that people think about when they think about in history, like Ra, the sun god from the Egyptians. So Ra talks about how the archetypes were channeled to the Egyptians and the Sumerians as a way to study the ascension process. So these cards, the 22 cards in the major arcana from the Law of One perspective, are just for study. And it's not like you pull a card and you pull the Tower and you're like, oh, I understand that, this, or you say like, am I going to break up? And then you pull the Tower and you're like, I'm breaking up. It's one of those where you actually look at the Tower card, you study the way the Tower card is, you study the properties of it, you study the energies of it, and you use it in your ascension process. So you're like, how does this apply to my process of ascension in this lifetime, rather than asking it questions like you do in normal tarot? So there's 22 cards. There's a different card at the end called the choice card. And the choice card is the most important card of the Law of One Tarot, because the choice card is really the choice in polarity that we make in this lifetime. So third dimension or third density is all about choice. It's all about free will. And there are two polarities, two very obvious polarities on this earth. One is the positive polarity and one is the negative polarity. Both are right from the creator's perspective. Both are accepted from the creator's perspective. Both are loved. But which one are you going to choose? And that will help you on your next step in the ascension process. And where a lot of people get stuck is not actually choosing their path of polarity, not actually being clear with the universe. Like, I am here to serve others, I'm on the positive path, or I'm here for myself, I'm on the negative path. So the choice card is one of the really important parts that's sort of different in the Law of One archetypal study deck.
Does that replace the universe?
Yeah.
The world?
Yeah. It's kind of the same. So like, if you think about the world kind of has that like endless possibility energy, but it's like a little bit more directed. So there are parts of the deck where the names are different, but they have similar energies to the major arcana we think of. So we have, the Tower, we have Temperance, we have the Fool. In the Law of One, they're actually called different things. It's called like Matrix of the Mind, Matrix of the Body, Matrix of the Spirit. And so it's different named, but they have similar energies, because from a tarot perspective, it's so unknown where it came from, where it's been used in Romania, it's been used Cardamom Sea, it's been used in France, it's been used in all these different places. So it has so many different energies, but the Law of One energy is more of like a specific one to Egyptians and the Sumerians.
So fucking cool. Thank you for making that. I can't wait. I'm totally going to be like one of the first ones signed up to get that. If there's a waiting list, how can I get on it? That's awesome.
Yes.
I'm a deck hoarder a little bit.
Which ones are your favorite?
Well, I really, my very first one that I got was a long time ago, and it was the Wild Unknown.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I probably had something when I was a teenager that I didn't pay attention to, but the Wild Unknown was the first one that I really like dove into. I think that was in like 2013 or something like this. 2012, 2013, whenever it came out. What the deck that I really though learned on, where I had a mentor and it actually started to speak to me, was an oracle, was the Thoth deck, the Thoth deck. So that's the one that like is sort of my home deck.
Yes.
But I play with all the different sort of modern decks. I really like Kristas, the Muse.
Yes.
I love the different takes. I'm trying to think of what I've got over there, because I don't have all my decks here. They're spread in Missouri, where I'm from, Puerto Viejo on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, here with friends. But my most recent obsession was the Muse.
Is it like a feminine deck or?
Yeah, it's
Cool.
really feminine. It's really feminine, actually. I think the whole thing is pretty femme.
That's so.
And Kristan has another deck that I can't. Hold on, everybody.
Yeah. It's deck time.
All right, so she's also got, so this is the Muse. I'm showing it to Krista. Listeners can't see. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous deck. And then this is her preview unit called the Light Seers deck, which is much more traditional. But it's like modern traditional. It's like if you went to Burning Man and had images from Burning Man on cards, but that were shown in the traditional tarot scenes. It would be that deck. And then the Muse is totally abstract, like completely abstract.
I've seen that deck. That deck's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. And it's funny, the energy of Thoth. So from a historical perspective, Ra is Thoth, is Hermes. So it's kind of like the same type of energy of these beings that came to Earth, a few different times, successfully and unsuccessfully, to try and support us in our ascension process. So Thoth has that energy, Ra has that same energy, and so does Hermes. So it's powerful. I mean, it's a really powerful, powerful thing.
It's so clear how much academic understanding you have about all these things. It's really cool, which I guess you really have to have if you're going to have the ambition of making a tarot deck or two. you better do your fucking homework. And it's so clear that you have, and it's really fun.
Oh. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it's like
Yeah.
an imposter thing, like I've been very careful because I don't want someone to write a review and be like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Or that's like my nightmare, almost to a extreme point. And I've always been someone that's interested in philosophy and history and because once you look at history, you realize that there's so much magic in history. Like all kings and queens had psychics by their side. A lot of people in history had psychics and wizards and mages, and all of these powerful mystical things have been infused in history. And it's only been in the past years that we've sort of removed the magic from it, the magic from all of this. And so when you look back, you can kind of put all the pieces and be like, oh my God, that's why that didn't totally make sense. Like when you look at Egypt, you're like, oh, they made mummies to like preserve the dead. And it's like, no, they were actually like ascending and they were actually using this technology to help them go back to the stars. So it's crazy.
It's so fucking crazy. Sorry, we're doing
Yes.
a completely off the norm in this podcast discussion, by the way. I'm not even looking at the normal questions I ask because this is too much fun to talk about these things. So if you're nerding out with us, then welcome. But it's really fucking crazy how much we have deviated from the truth of magic. And I've always known, I mean, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the ancient Egyptian pyramids, and like I majored in anthropology and women's studies, but didn't quite understand why. There's like, in retrospect, I can see all the ways that I was like showing my interest in these things. And yet I was a hardcore agnostic / atheist because I grew up in a Southern Baptist town. And I was just like anti-religion, and I equated spirituality with religion. And we like, obviously those are not the same. However, when you're a teenager, they can be.
Yes.
So what's interesting now is to uncover, and this is what's really exciting about having been an atheist leaning agnostic, is that the discovery of magic and then looking back at all the evidence that there is of it with that left brain scientific mind, and it's irrefutable. And there's fucking temples that are portals that were arguably built 35,000 years ago, like in the days of Atlantis or Lemuria. Like there's so much evidence out there for it.
Yeah. And even like the pyramids on the ley lines and like the energy vortices where there's these like portals of energy on earth that just emit this frequency that's, unexplicable. And then you have people that didn't have any technology from our understanding building pyramids right on these places that exactly align to certain star systems and certain degrees and certain places. It's so wild. And we also think that through history you keep progressing forward. It's like we're smarter than them. You always assume that we're the smartest humans that have ever existed on earth, and that's very much not true. There have been smarter and more advanced species than us, and we just have the assumption that we know everything and that we are the most advanced, and I just don't think that's true.
Absolutely not. I mean, people still tell the lie that like slaves built the pyramids.
I know.
Like, no,
it doesn't. And it's so funny how people just ignore the information and data because they don't want to understand it. That's even too like Stonehenge. Like Stonehenge doesn't make sense at all. Like those stones actually are from nowhere near that area. They're too heavy to be brought in. There's no marks where they led. Like there's just so much evidence of alien interaction with so many different things. Machu Picchu, Tetacowan, and you just can't deny it once you look at it. And it makes the world seem so interesting and cool. You're like, wow, like I'm looking at history and life so differently.
It's been an obsession of mine for a couple of years, but with increasing rapidity. And that is the Mary Magdalene priestess archetype and line. And I'm reading a novel right now called Magdalene Rising that is completely reorganizing my freaking cells. It is so good. I've read nonfiction, a lot of nonfiction, and even renegade nonfiction about Mary Magdalene. But now I'm reading this fictional piece, which helps it embed in my system because it's got emotions tied to it. And my God, there's so much that we have swept under the rug, ignored, completely covered up. And it's really exciting to find it.
It's like the feminine, if you think
Yeah.
about probably come from your church experience, I grew up really Catholic, and it's like, wow, they really just shit on the feminine, like Madonna, it's Mary the martyr or Madonna the whore and Immaculate Conception. And, there was another Mary Magdalene that was considered a whore from historical perspective from the Catholic Church, which isn't true at all. And it's like, all the ways in which the feminine has been like shunned or shut down or all these things. And when you uncover it, you're like, oh my God, this is so powerful.
It's true. I mean, and that's why I rejected all of it for so
Yes.
long, is because it's so funny because, again, another piece of evidence that I was tapped into something before I knew it. And that is at the age of like 13, I became obsessed with Tori Amos when I heard a song called Icicle, which was about pleasuring oneself during church. And I heard that and I was like, that is the truth. Fuck all this repression stuff and how Jesus couldn't possibly have sex with a woman. Like I want to align with this truth. And and there was no one around me doing that. It was just
Mhm.
some sort of like innate knowing I had that was drawn to the emergence of sexuality and spirituality.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just thought at the time I was being a rebel.
Yes, I don't know if you listened to our inner teen episode. So we just did an episode on Almost 30 about healing the inner teenager. And there's so much talk about healing the inner child and everything like that. But I remember when I started to really think about my inner teen, and my inner teen was such a rebel. I was such a rebel, and I had this rebel heart and this rebel spirit. And there's so much healing to be had there, for like,
Mm.
because the rebel for me, um, meant anger and repression and like feeling misunderstood and feeling like this feeling of like this like rage almost, about the world and all the injustices in it with the patriarchy and with my family and all of that. So it's like, where can we heal or think about supporting your rebel, when you were kind of discovering this about sexuality and spirituality, especially as it relates to your experience in the church?
Yeah, I have not listened to that episode, but I'm going to, because when people ask me to speak to my inner child, it's my inner preteen or adolescent that comes up for me the most. I can't really connect with my 5-year-old, but I can connect with my 12, 13, 14-year-old pretty hard.
Yes, there you go. And that's so powerful. I mean, she has so much to say. And, what I realized with my inner teen was that she deserves respect. And I was someone that I felt like I deserved respect. No one respected me for the wisdom that I had even at that young age. And I had that similar experience too, where it was hard for me to connect to my inner child. And what was helpful for me to connect with my inner child to heal was having photographs of myself. So when I went home for the holidays, I was able to take photos of photos that my mother had had, so I could look at that girl, and it helped me to just visualize her more, because otherwise I was like, who is that person?
Yeah, totally. So what y'all don't know is that Krista and I recorded like 20 minutes of this episode before there was a blip in the internet. But we were having a really cool conversation. I mean, this conversation is super juicy. It's actually my favorite topics, talking about ancient priestesses and temples and all of that. I really can't think of a more exciting topic.
Yes, I know.
It's my favorite topic. Anytime anyone wants to talk to me about that stuff, please call me up. Tell me everything you know and feel. I'm here for it. And I want to ask the question again, because I really loved your answer about like, what is your Krista's sole purpose on this planet in this incarnation right now?
Mm. Yeah, I love talking about this. And, I was someone that wanted a purpose my entire life. I remember being very young, and I always had this burning side of me, this like yearning for purpose, this yearning to feel like I was here for a reason, and that I was going to make a difference, and that I mattered in the world. And I never felt like I had that. And that led to an insane drive, but it also led to deep depression and anxiety at times, a feeling of feeling lost, of feeling worthless, and just this emptiness. And I'll never forget, I found Lindsay, and I found Almost 30 through failing to get what I thought was supposed to be my dream career. And we just started sharing our hearts on the closet floor. And all of the pain that I had been through in my life as it relates to my family and the situations that I was in led me to become someone that was deeply curious, loved asking questions, loved speaking to people, loved learning, and loved growing. And that helped me to be the person that I am today with almost 30, you know, the interviewer that I am today, the person that just really loves to learn and loves to grow. So I found my purpose through almost 30. That was like one of my purposes. And I made almost 30 my full purpose. You know, I was like, oh, this is my purpose. It feels so good to feel like I can be myself and I can express and I can work hard and I could be creative. And then, you know, over the years, I've also realized that my purpose isn't just a thing. It's not a doing, it's a being. And my purpose is just to be who I am and figure out who that is and be more of it, you know, to unlearn all the things that I had learned throughout my life that weren't serving me and relearn all the beauty of all that I am. So now my purpose is really being more of who I am as much as I can be.
I think that's freaking amazing, and I love it. And I have a follow-up question that I want to get to that's related to the law of one. And I also just want to say that, like I said before, what I love is when people answer that question with the response of, my purpose is to be the most fully expressed version of who I am. And that's because I know in my bones, I don't even want to say I believe, I know in my bones that we are all different individuated sort of flavors or light or colors of the one God or the one source or one divine. And the more that we can fully express ourselves in that flavor, that color, that vibration, the more that we are doing sort of God's work, because the whole purpose of us to be here on this planet right now is to have all of the experiences that we possibly can, to learn and grow and to experience the sensual beauty of this planet.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's like, you know, and I think it's unlearning that you being yourself is selfish. And I think, you know, for most of my life, I was taught that me being myself and caring about my needs and having boundaries and being focused on my own path and my own healing and my own success was selfish. And I've had to unlearn all of that, you know, because being focused on my own healing and my own growth is actually the most kind thing I can do for myself and for others. Because, you know, from being a Southern Baptist, like when you're so focused on everyone else, like they need to be good, they need to be doing this thing, they have to be following all these rules to be good. That's not how you're whole, and that's not how you're happy, and that's not what God wants for us. God wants for us to focus on our path, our mission, our purpose, being happy, being whole, being all these things. So I've really let go of needing to control others, needing to have others approve my path, needing to feel like others understand my path, needing to care so much about what everyone else is thinking. And by being myself and being whole and being happy, I can support others. Then I can help impact other people in the best way. But unless I'm whole first, it's not going to work.
How do you sort of bridge that with the service to self, service to others choice point?
Yes. Yeah. So for anyone that's listening, so service to self and service to others is a phrase that they use in the Law of One text. And it basically talks about negative and positive polarity. So service to others is basically the positive path, the path of light, and service to self is the negative path of polarity. So it's basically like selfishness and then selflessness. So by being someone that is service to others or on the positive path of polarity, I am essentially both serving the creator and serving others by serving myself. Because if we are all one, then we are all in service to the creator. So even the negative path of polarity is in service to the creator in its own way, because it is a part of the creator. So the way that I see it is that by one of the biggest tenets and principles of Law of One is honoring others' free will. And free will infringement is one of the biggest indicators of service to self polarity. So we can look at free will infringement by governments, by programming, by cult leaders, by political leaders, by dictators, by people that are very controlling and infringing on other people's free will. They're telling them what to do. They're telling them how to be. They are basically taking away their ability to choose their own path in this lifetime. So when I am sitting here as someone that's wanting to serve and help others, and I'm also wanting to change them or control them, or wanting them to act how I would act, or wanting them to do how I would do, I would be infringing on their free will. So I choose to serve the path of positive polarity by having the highest vibration I can, by being a vibration that uplifts others on the planet, and then also serving myself as the creator. And then inherently that serves others, because if I am in service to the creator and in service to myself, then I have enough energy to give and serve other people.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's
Thank you.
complicated though, that
It
whole
is,
thing.
it's complicated, but you articulated that really,
Oh,
really
thank you.
well.
Have you read Law of One?
I've dabbled in it. I've
Okay.
dabbled in it. I haven't read it.
Yes.
I listened to a lot of podcasts about
Yes.
it, and
Yes.
I've watched a lot of videos about it.
Like Aaron Abke's?
Yes, and actually
Yes.
he's on the dock for interview in the next couple of weeks. I'm so excited to talk
Love
with
him.
him.
He's the
I
best.
know. So he's the one who really introduced me to Love One. And then from that place, and it was in 2020 when I was in all these like dark rabbit holes too. So his videos were like a balm for my soul. So it was really helping me to find neutrality when I was being pulled in so much polarity.
Yes.
And so from that point I dove deeper, but I haven't actually read the source material yet.
Yeah, it's a vibe. I mean, it's really challenging to read, but like you said with the Mary Magdalene book that you're reading, it's one of those things, like from a cellular level, it like activates something in you. So it's just finding those books that really resonate with that part of you and just kind of going deep on them. So it might resonate for you, it might not, but for me, it was something that, really did. So I just always encourage people to just follow whatever feels good for them, like you with the Mary Magdalene book.
I feel like the more that things can be made into a novel of some kind, or made into some sort of, because I read a lot of nonfiction almost exclusively, but having rediscovered the novel in this book that I'm reading now is so nice, because it switches on a different part of my brain, and it helps me actually integrate the history and the information so much better, because I have an emotional tie to it. So if I'm thinking about because Mary Magdalene Rising takes place in Ireland. And as I'm learning about the Druidic culture and the ancient Celtic culture, like a lot of those facts would, or perceptions or whatever, mythologies would probably go in one ear and out the other if I were reading it nonfiction. But because it's fictionalized, I'm like so immersed in it with my whole left brain and right brain and, and center.
Yes.
So I want somebody to write a novel after the tarot deck. I'm going to totally immerse myself in the activation or the activator, the activation.
So activation's the tarot, and then Law of One is the archetypal deck.
Okay, well, I'm going to dive into both of them, and then we need somebody to write a novel that somehow conveys the Law of One.
Yes. And you know what? My book idea is to write like a return to love for Law of One. So it's like,
oh yes,
how can I make the teachings like apply to people and be supportive for people?
Love that book.
Yeah, it's good. And so many people read Law of One and they're like, oh, this is too heavy and wordy. But when you feel like you're remembering something and not reading it, like, which is sort of what you feel about, because I feel like you are very Druidic. Like when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. It becomes easy. So actually that is my book idea. And hopefully I can write that, next year or maybe later this year.
I fully support that. Let me know if you ever need anything.
You'd probably be an amazing writer too. Oh my gosh.
It's so cool. So now I'm lost in this beautiful, fantastical.
I know.
World
I was like, do we want to talk about digital marketing?
No. Well, only here's how I would frame that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, how can we, so we're talking about, new paradigm, new earth, like how do we embody the new paradigm, the new earth? Like the old world is crumbling, service to self world, I hope, is crumbling, because honestly, the powers that be right now on the global level are like the epitome of service to self vibration, from what I can tell, from my perception. And to a point that I'm not even going to go into right now, but it's pretty like right spot on when you said like taking people's free, or like wanting to infringe on people's free will. That's the exact mission.
Yes, 100%.
So moving from that old crumbling paradigm to creating our new world paradigm, our new earth paradigm. So there's a whole conversation about what that looks like. And then there's the conversation of like, how can we, and this is why my podcast and agency is called Conscious Conversion. It's the double meaning of sales conversions and conversion to a new way of life, a new way of living, a new way of being in the world. How can we bring this new paradigm to the masses, to the mainstream, to the 2 billion people on Facebook and Instagram and beyond?
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, and this is might be different for other people, I think for me, from even reading Law of One, like my job isn't to bring my idea and perspective to 2 billion people or 8 billion people, however many people there are in the world, because then I'm sort of in a game of wanting to be probably in service to my ego and in power. And what works for me in my life and what is best for me in my life is not best for everyone. So, my job is really to figure out what are my unique gifts and what are my unique skills and how can I use those in service to myself to, be better and fuel myself and fuel my connection and heal myself and then be in service to others. Like, how can I be living in a way that feels like my life is fluid? Like, I just want this fluid life that feels like I'm going into a meeting that's with friends, but with business partners. And then I'm doing something that feels natural to me. Nothing feels like pushing. It all feels like it's happening really organically and it's happening in service to God. And I think the way that I do that is by every day giving my life up to God and just saying, like, I want what God wants for me. Whatever God wants for me is what I want for myself. And for so long, I was in this path of like wanting to manifest and wanting to make all these lists and wanting to like do all these things. And it just ended up being for me something where I was actually creating things and bringing things into my life that weren't as exciting or cool as what God was wanting to bring for me. And so now just by giving it up to God, I just follow, that path. But I do believe that, we as wanderers, the Law of One calls it, which are people that have came back to earth to support in the evolution, wanderers. We are here to support the planet, and we support the planet through our vibration. So through our natural vibratory state. And then we can also support the planet by being people that are paradigm breakers and paradigm shifters. So that's creating environments of work or, contribution that feel really nourishing and feel good. So for us and our team, it's like creating an environment where people feel like they're in service, feel like they're on purpose, feel like they're supporting the mission, feel like their health is and well-being is taken in consideration, feel like they're compensated appropriately, feel like they're, making a difference in the world. So I think the last thing I will say is just choosing to narrow my focus to what I can control in my life and what I can impact, and just focusing really on that. Because when we go to like a global perspective, it sort of feels like the Western ideology where we think really globally. We're like, how can we impact the people in Africa and the people in all these places all over the world? And I think that sometimes distills our ability to actually make a difference and actually make change, where we can make change within our community, within our neighborhood, within our team, within our friendships, within the actual ecosystem that we can interact with on a daily basis, rather than imposing ourselves upon cultures and people that might not want it or need it.
Fuck yeah.
Yes.
And how does that map onto digital marketing?
Yeah.
Right? So where we are actually, attempting to reach people that are outside of our immediate scope and our immediate neighborhood. I mean, unless you're like a super local marketing person, yes. But for the most of the digital marketing I imagine that you do and that I do is international.
Yes.
So how do we reconcile that? Yes, we want to make a difference in our immediate vicinity, yes, and raise the vibration of our own hearts, mm-hmm, as well as having a reverberating impact to those immediate people in our lives, and also, mm-hmm, do this thing that we do, yes, with websites and paid advertising and social media.
Yes. And I'm in that world very much. Almost 30 is a very media driven company. We're very social media driven. We're very digital marketing driven. So I'm not afraid of it and I'm not ashamed of it. And I love it so much. I think for me, I realized that the ads that I engaged with, or the companies that I engaged with, or the social media I engaged with, there's like a vibrational frequency that you can feel. And I think everyone kind of knows this when they're scrolling Instagram, for an example. When you're scrolling and there's a post that makes you stop, and there's a caption that makes you stop, and there's a story that makes you stop, or there's these things that really catch your attention. And that's because what I've noticed is that a lot of times it's coming from that heart frequency, or it's coming from a frequency of truth, and people can tell and feel truth. the people that I want to engage with or interact with. So some people are not feeling the same truth that I'm feeling, but the people that I want to engage with and interact with are on the same vibrational frequency of truth. So when we're doing our digital marketing, our marketing strategy, we just have to get as true and as clear as we can and make sure that our aesthetic, our copy, our, goal, and our entire process is just rooted in truth. How can we serve our community? I know that the life edit has been something that has transformed my life. So how can I communicate from the heart what that means to me in a way that feels authentic and true? And that message, whether it's communicated with a beautiful graphic or a story or an ad or whatever it is, when communicated from my heart, will reach the right people in the right places at the right time. And, with every launch we've ever done or everything we've ever done as a business, we would always, Lindsay and I used to be very numbers focused. We were numbers obsessed. We used to do like all the numbers all the time. And we actually let that go, about a year and a half ago. And now we just focus on like knowing and trusting that our voice, our brand, our ads will reach the right amount of people at the right time, and not to serve the numbers, but serve the mission and the people that we're actually able to connect with. So how can we be numbers focused because it's important, but also be people focused? Like if you're doing something that matters in the world, then the work that you do when it impacts one person will impact every single person within that person's life as well. So we're trying to focus more on the actual people that we impact and not just like the number behind them. So first thing is staying in truth, being super clear about your truth and your intention, and then making sure that the branding, aesthetic, copy, all of the actual strategy part of it is in aligned to that truth and mission. And then letting go of such control over the numbers that it's going to be harmful to you. It's going to make you not excited or engaged, and just focusing on the actual people that you're supporting.
You basically just created an ad for the Conscious Conversion Agency.
There you go, baby. Flip it.
No, but I mean, and seriously, this has been sort of my, not my challenge, but it's the niche that I've chosen. I really want to work with people who are thought leaders, who are wanting to create real transformation in individual lives and on the planet. And it is a real shift to go from like, okay, so what's the data and how much ROI do we have and what's the cost per link click and what's the cost per lead and blah, blah, blah. And I'm constantly wanting to honor that. And at the same time, be like, okay, let's take a broader lens. Let's take a step back. Let's look at like, what impact are you having on these individuals? And what is the long game for you? What is your ultimate hope and dream?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's that's the masculine versus the feminine almost a little bit. And, I don't ever want to be someone that's like masculine versus feminine, because we all are both. And it's beautiful that we all are both. But the masculine way or the old way was like, okay, numbers, 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 and almost seeing people as robots or as machines. And the feminine is more like, okay, how did this make you feel? Like if you have high numbers, but you're not enjoying it, what's the point? If you have high numbers and you don't feel like you're connected to the work you're doing, then what's the point? And I realized being in the corporate world where I didn't connect to the work that I was doing for so long, that there's no point for me to be putting my energy into something that I don't connect with. I would rather have less numbers, less conversions, less whatever, and connect with what I'm doing because it feels purposeful, than have high margins, high numbers, high clicks, high all these things if I'm not at all engaged with or connecting to what I'm doing.
Beautiful. And then the people who are seeing your work are going to feel that.
Yeah. And I think this too, but like, I also think, because I'm imagining there's some people listening that are like, okay, but people aren't still connecting. Like people are not connecting. And I think there's one side of it where it's like, you need to look at the positives and focus on even the 3 people that are connecting, and sort of frame it around, wow. So, kind of doing the thought of like, so many people are connecting with me. How can I affirm this? How can I support myself in the creation of the reality that I want through a supportive thought process? But then there's also like, sometimes things aren't meant for us, and the universe is kind of reflecting those back to us when we need to take another direction. So always checking in, like, are you doing the inner work that is allowing you to be seen, that is allowing you to feel heard, that is allowing you to feel like your mission and your message are important, without having the subconscious belief, I'm afraid to be seen, I'm afraid to be heard, I'm afraid to be big, Or is the universe, if it's not working, telling you or redirecting you down another path? And how do you know when you should follow that?
Beautiful. And that's a really uncomfortable conversation to have with a
Yes.
client.
Yeah, I know. I actually, yeah, we coach people too. And it's like, you can't really, you have to just support people in their own path to figuring that out, because if you make that decision for someone, then they'll be resentful and they might not even get it.
Yeah.
It's like therapy.
But it really is. No, it's funny because I have a master's in social work, and the marketing is not, I mean, it's been my background for the last several years, but it was not my academic background. And I think that I bring my master's in social work to the table with the work that I do more than any other training I've ever had.
Yes. Isn't it funny? Like, but it's funny. For me, I just realized with marketing and sales and all of that, it's people, it's communication, it's energetic. It's like, it is all of the things that I'm naturally good at. And when people can see it less complicated, it's actually not as complicated as you think. Like, say clearly what you feel and what you desire. And how do you bring that in a way that looks like the way you want to look, the way you want it to look? And then how can you just sort of be and hold the pose of what it is that you're wanting to do or bring?
Beautiful. Yeah. Sounds like you've got similar superpowers to me.
Mhm.
And for me, I tell people like digital marketing, I'm good at it. I have a team that's really good at it, but really my superpowers are relationships and communication. I love having really direct, compassionate, transparent communication and being able to navigate all sorts of awkward situations and with, and harmonizing things that feel disharmony.
Yes. Yes.
And building relationships with people and going really fucking deep with people really quickly.
Yes. That's the
That's
feminine again. What are your signs?
Taurus sun, Scorpio moon,
Got it.
Cancer rising.
Okay, there we go. That depth, that transformation, that rebirth, that depth is all that Scorpio, baby.
I know. Yeah, and Taurus and Scorpio are in opposition. They're opposite
Yes.
signs.
Yes.
So that's pretty interesting, pretty fun. What about you?
Pisces sun, Virgo rising, and then Sag moon.
All right.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm kind of, my Pisces is like, I don't think it's very obvious that I'm a Pisces. Um, but it's like when I'm in my softest, kindest, warmest, when I'm safest, I'm my Pisces, but most of the time I feel very Virgo, very much that go-getter, that like planner. And then I have a lot of houses in Capricorn. So that's like where I get my work side, is all the houses in Capricorn.
I feel like Pisces, at least the Pisces I know, they're deep feelers, but they think about their feelings a lot. It's like
Yes.
the heady version of the feeler.
Yes. It's the worst. The worst. That's literally like anxiety defined, honestly, is that like that whole thing. But yeah, that's a whole vibe. And even in just back to the law of one, the law of one text talks a lot about leveraging three modes of study within your life for understanding ascension. And the law of one says that it can be either astrology, the archetypal study through the tarot, or the Kabbalah. And so you can choose one of those routes, whatever routes that you feel most called to doing. But by choosing one, you're going to support yourself the most in your ascension process. So I felt like that was super fascinating, because I feel like, we always are looking for a tool or a resource, and sometimes they're right in front of us, and sometimes we already feel super called to them. And I just chose, tarot as the route that I feel most excited by, but they say any of those three.
What was the first one again?
Astrology, Kabbalah,
Astrology, Kabbalah,
and
and,
then,
and tarot.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I would say tarot was the one that I dove in, but they're all very connected because if you look at the Thoth deck, however you want to say
Yes.
it,
Yes.
it's got all of the astrology built into it, and it's got
Mhm.
Kabbalah built into it as well. So he was really doing his work.
Yeah, I was just reading about, I'm trying to learn more about Kabbalah. I just feel like it's kind of, that Jewish mysticism. It's like coming more into my world now, but it's a whole can of worms. When you get into that, you're like, wow, this is going to take a while, but Kabbalah is fascinating as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, this is amazing. Is there anything that you feel like we haven't touched on that you feel like we should dive into?
Hmm. We could
Feel
talk
like
about the
we
life edit a little bit.
Yeah, I want to hear about, yeah, let's talk about the life edit.
Yes. Yeah. So life edit is a course that I'm going to be doing in April, and I'm really excited about it. So it was end of 2019, and I was pre-depressed, knowing what was going to happen in 2020 from like an energetic perspective, and knowing that 2020 was going to be a year of deep shadow work for me. And during that time, I realized that I wanted to make a lot of change in my life, and I wanted to create more space for abundance and growth and beauty. And I was like, having these visualizations every day where I'd visualize my future life, my future home in Malibu with tons of greenery around me, and this wearing this silk robe and having this beautiful breakfast, and, having this beautiful experience of my future life. And then I'd open my eyes and be like, I'm not really in that right now. But I realized that there's so much we can do to bring ourselves closer to that visualization or that manifestation. And even if it's just getting the silk robe that I visualized myself in, or getting the really beautiful, nourishing breakfast, or organizing my closet, because I know that my future self has a beautifully organized closet, or cleaning up my digital footprint, or checking in on my relationships. There's just a lot of different aspects of our life that we can actually make change on today to bring us closer to that higher self. So the Life Edit really looks at your finances, your relational life, your wellness routine, your digital life, your spatial life. And yes, it's those 5 things, and really gives you actionable tips and practices and resources to change parts of that today so you can live more aligned to your highest self.
Amazing. So how can people find out more about that?
lifeeditbykrista.com. That's lifeeditbykrista.com, or just almost30.com. But yeah, we have a free program right now. It's called a mini challenge, which has just like a distilled version of the Life Edit that people can do. And then the program starts like end of April for people to join if they want to join me doing it.
All right. Well, we'll bump this episode to happen in April so that we make sure that we get folks in the door for that, because that sounds amazing.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about it. It'll be great.
Yay. Well, thank you for telling us about it. And then how people can find you. I know that you're very findable on the IG,
Yes,
on the Instagram.
Yes, my Instagram is It's Krista. It's ITS Krista, Krista. It's Krista. And then Almost 30 podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, almost30.com.
It's an awesome podcast, y'all. It's so good. It's up there on my top favorite podcasts. Thanks. Thank you for the work that y'all do in the world, the play that y'all do in the world. And I'm really looking forward to continued connection. And thanks y'all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and sending you all so much love and gratitude. Take care.